Free. I just don't, I wish there was an adapter for
I
use.
wish I knew more about it.
Yeah.
No. Okay. We're not ready to
Nora's
start
here.
yet.
No? Oh,
Not yet.
I don't know. who
We'll give it
Nora
a couple
is.
minutes because we're early, you know.
oh, okay. Let me make this announcement about the art exhibit at the municipal building.
Ooh.
It's about going on vacation. That's the theme. So if you want to take a dreamscape of vacation ideas, this would be ideal. The artist reception is this Friday. Starts at 6:30, goes to 8 o'clock. I think there'll be a jazz group there too, with music in the background.
You went to last.
And they serve refreshments, really nice. So I'll pass this around, but I need this back. This is my last
The
copy.
exhibit on.
And it was judged by Rena Siegel, George Siegel's daughter.
Whoa. There we go.
So,
Is that right?
Yeah. And she has good taste because she picked two of my paintings. I can vouch for her.
You can
We
vouch for
have
it.
two artists here, Judy's pictures.
Yeah,
taken
well,
too.
that's
So
great.
it's this Friday,
This
6:30?
Friday, 6:30 to 8.
Uh-huh.
And who are they exhibiting?
Okay. I'll put that on the calendar.
And we have the action-packed batting practice and fielding practice
Hello.
for the senior citizens starting Monday.
What is this?
And I'm in charge of that. That's 10:30 till 12 o'clock.
Batting practice?
For anybody who, doesn't matter what your age is. You could be 28, 39.
Isn't that gonna
Pretend it's
skew?
39.
Yeah, pretending you're 39. And there's no running. That, because
I don't think they're running class.
that's where the injuries take place.
Uh-huh.
Me and my bionic leg will just stand there and hit the ball.
Perfect,
We can
perfect.
make them fast.
So it's over at Reichler Park, field number 1. That's the one over by the eating area there.
Okay.
And it'll be Monday. That'll be the first one. We're gonna run it through the whole summer. I started it last year in late August. We got rained out 3 times out of 6.
So I have a couple of announcements. These are the Kingston
Okay.
Lock Tenders
You
House.
still have time, go ahead.
Okay, the Kingston Lock Tenders House is open on weekends, Saturdays and Sundays. It's down the bottom of the hill next to, what is it, Enoterra and whatever. The 2 exhibits, one of them is architectural drawings of the canal house and the old swing bridge that was there. And the other one is celebrating 100 years of the Kingston Volunteer Fire Company. And this was one of my rough mock-ups that I'm using the back for scrap paper. but it's all about the volunteers. George Luck gave a talk, which is on the Kingston Historical Society website, which is all about the fires and the organization of the group. But this is about the folks who volunteered over the century.
Can I see that?
You can see that.
Okay, that's all right.
Well, it's got random pictures. that was try number 4, I think, of 7. So anyway,
Okay, I guess we should start. It's good. It's a good time.
Okay.
Good time to start. So,
I think we got, does anybody else have an announcement?
Oh, okay.
No?
any announcements? No.
Okay, good. We got the announcements out of the way.
oh man, that's great.
Just
Oh, thank you for
gotta pass it down, gotta return.
Yours was great. Yours was good.
Love to share with the audience.
All right.
Okay.
You gotta let people in.
You know, we used to go to the
That
pancake
firehouse is like a gathering place.
Oh yeah, yeah. It was the place in town where you could go see prize fights. and drink for that matter, but that's not an important thing.
That's like your community center.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
It was the only place that was there for. I mean, it's been there since the 30s, I think.
Is that right?
So it's
Building
quite
is
as
that old.
This is quite as old as.
I
Well, it
wonder
changed.
Yeah.
It kept changing.
if Dawn is the oldest person in the town.
But
All right.
Okay, so we're good now, right? We'll start. So
Oh,
tonight's meeting is about signs, historical signs in the township. So there's 2 aspects to this. First is we're getting ready for the 250th bicentennial anniversary. So there's a couple places in town that would be eligible for that, or things that happen there that would put us on the map. And then we'll talk about other signs too throughout the township. There's a lot of history here. So there's two aspects to it. Obviously, the time is short between now and 2026. So I guess that would be the first, the first order of business to try that. But it's a good idea to talk about signs in general because it can be done. There are places in the township, there are grants available. And so even beyond the bicentennial celebration, we were talking about possibly doing other signs in town. So there's a lot of things to talk about. I gotta let people in here. But that's how it'll start. So right now, I'll go to the first one, which is, of course, I could say it's our biggest claim to fame. Sorry you can't read that because that I don't know how to remove that block from there. But George Washington stayed at Longbridge Farm, and then he went over on his way out to the Battle of Monmouth. He stopped with Crossroads at Dayton, and he paid a bill there. And we're not sure exactly why he paid the bill, but that part you can dispute. But the fact is, it was documented that he was here and he encamped overnight. Actually, tomorrow, the 26th, would be the anniversary of when it happened in 1778. So that was pretty significant, and that was established by Hunter Research back in 2002. The township paid for the study to be done. So that's documented. It was always thought of that that's how it happened, but they did the research for it and found out that it was indeed true.
Right. Let me
Go ahead,
add.
sure.
Both are documented.
What's both?
The Longbridge
okay.
Farm stay and the Wetherill Tavern,
Right.
now the Wawa site. Both are documented. They have eyewitness accounts from diaries of soldiers and a couple of officers. And we have documentation on the $14 bill. So he was definitely there. The thing we don't know is where he stayed the night. We don't know if he stayed at Longbridge Farm, or we don't know if he stayed at the Wetherill Inn. The question is whether he stayed at this one or that one, but that's beside the point. He was there, and we have the documentation, and both sites deserve notice.
Yeah.
And tonight, in fact, right now, because it's dark, at sunset, he marched from Kingston to the Long Bridge.
Right.
On this very
Funny
night.
that we're meeting tonight.
And it was rainy, right? It was really
It was
rainy.
hot.
It was
hot,
muggy.
steamy.
It was so hot, people were dying. It was bad.
Yeah,
And this past week was perfect weather for the revolution because
Right.
if we'd all worn wool for the past 3 days, some of us would be dead.
And the tents were left in Kingston.
Yes, they left all the baggage in
So the
Kingston.
men had no
It's
tents
still there.
because Washington wanted to travel light to move fast.
This Hunter research documentation, is that something that is available to read?
What
Oh,
was
yeah.
it? What was the question?
Yeah, we have that. We have that in the archive.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Is it
And
something
the
that
thing
we
about
can read?
Longbridge Farm is actually up on the website. If you go to our website and instead of searching for a book, you go search website and you put in Longbridge Farm, the unabridged account of there. It's actually a pretty interesting read. And it talks about the different. Well, actually, we've talked about it in past meetings, but check it out because you can download the whole thing and you can print it out if you wanted to. So it's on our website. It's just
Yeah,
look
and
up
if you
Longbridge
want,
Farm.
if you want your hands on a copy, hard copy, we have a Hunter in there, in the cabinet there. We have it in the archives over there.
Yeah.
And I can run a Xerox for you too.
No.
if you want.
From a historic preservation point of view.
Hi, come on in.
Hello.
Ed.
Hi,
Hi.
Robbie.
Hi.
Okay, this is Robbie.
Hello, everyone.
I'm going to be talking with him about Indo-American history in South Brunswick. And he volunteered to sit in on the meeting because he wants to find out what we're all about. Wants to make sure we're not doing anything, that would put us on the terrorist list or undermine the principles of historic research. Robbie, while you're waiting, this is all we have. This is just to get you started, but while the meeting's going on, you can look through that stuff, but that's all we have in the archives on Indo-American history
Oh, okay.
in South Brunswick. Okay?
I serve on the Historic Preservation Commission, and one of our colleagues, Robert von Zumbusch, has been mentioning that this road to Monmouth, it literally is a potential going from Kingston along
Ridge Road.
Ridge Road, cross Route 1, all the way up through Monmouth Junction to Dayton. And what he's saying is this is very important, but we're looking at it from a potential thread to use to promote history. We have one historic district basically in Kingston. I believe that there are other areas that have deserve to be affirmed and supported.
Yes,
One of them is Monmouth Junction, one is Dayton.
right,
And the road to Monmouth is the thread that ties them together.
yes. Good.
So, but it's an idea. However, there is a lot of quote challenges to convert or develop or have other new historic
To get to your South Brunswick.
districts.
And to keep in mind, John, the timing is very important because in 2028 will be the anniversary
Yeah.
commemoration of the road to Monmouth. And we're trying to get ready for that. So this is like a head start.
Well, the
But
signs to me
before
are,
you know it, the time will be right.
2028.
the signs, I'm sorry, I'll turn it back there.
Okay. No, that's fine. That's good. That's relevant. So what we're talking about is this is probably the biggest thing that happened inside. Well, also there's Kingston too. So the other site is the bridge over Kingston, and this was also documented too. So these are the two places in town that we know that George Washington, or we want to count it as three places. You want to count it as Dayton, Long Bridge Farm, and the Kingston Bridge. So I don't know how you want to look at it, but these places, there's no doubt that he was definitely there. So those are the three that I have for Washington and the Revolutionary War. Now, Ed, do you have any other ideas for how we commemorate the Revolutionary War in 2 years other than those?
Well, there's a lot more. Remember, there are two skirmishes. We haven't really gotten credit for either one of those, and I'd like to see those, some sort of sign for those, because that's actual fighting. When you talk about Washington and marching through, there's no action other than the marching through. Where you have men actually fighting, I think we should say something about that in some sort of signed form.
Okay.
Now, the bridge is important because Washington ordered it destroyed. It was semi-destroyed to stop Cornwallis from catching up with him, to delay him. So that's important, and that was action. That was action. But that's probably about the greatest action of Washington coming through South Brunswick. As far as camping at Long Bridge Farm, as far as paying a bill at the Wetherill Tavern, that's not really that exciting or that big a deal, but it is historic. Okay, we should commemorate it. But as far as action, I think that should have equal stance. And I'm talking about the Stryker skirmish at 10 Mile Run, right behind the Wells Fargo Bank.
Is that on the retreat south or?
No, that's a separate thing.
Okay.
That's after Washington turns left and heads out towards Plaquemine. And then the Nixon skirmish, which was called the Cranberry skirmish, which probably happened on Wetherill's property, John Wetherill. Okay, and so that would get John Wetherill involved in the history too. And that was just north of Cranberry on the border with South Brunswick. And you got to keep in mind that Cranberry at the time was part of the South Ward,
Right.
which was South Brunswick. So those two skirmishes, I think, should have some emphasis there. But I'm giving you the names for them. Cranberry skirmish, and at that time, Cranberry was spelled like the berry, Berry. They didn't change it till years later. And then the Stryker skirmish, which was the 20 militia men against 200 British on Route 27, which would be the King's Highway right behind the bank. Okay, now they don't know the exact location of the Nixon skirmish. But if I say on the border between Cranberry and South Brunswick, then you get an image of Route 130. and you go headed towards Cranberry. You know where the road forks to Main Street, Cranberry?
Mm.
Okay, well, up from there where the South Brunswick border is probably where that skirmish took place. Okay, so those would be
Okay.
two right there.
Okay, so that's total of
Yeah,
four.
I
Yeah.
just have a question. When were these two skirmishes? Were they connected to the route to the Battle of Monmouth?
No, they were in 1777. The
Okay.
Striker skirmish was in January, right after the Battle of Princeton.
Mhm.
And I believe the Nixon skirmish, I don't have my notes with me, was in March of 77. And Nixon was in charge of a horse troop, and their headquarters was the Cranberry Inn. You know it as the Cranberry Inn. And they marched up from there because they got rumors that there were some foragers, either from New Brunswick or from Monmouth County, and they were stealing cattle. And back in those days, those guys were called cowboys. That was the colonial term for cattle rustlers, cowboys.
That's not a joke, is it?
No, it's true. Half of what I say is true.
Half of what you say is
So you
true.
just have to do some weeding. Okay, so I've written extensively about both skirmishes. One of them is in the lock tender's house in book form, Striker's Gambit.
Oh, yes.
Okay. The other one is yet to go to print. But that is well documented because that was in Nixon's diary down at the Trenton Museum.
Okay.
Yeah, so the documentation is there. And I had to argue my point with David Hackett Fisher about the Striker skirmish because he had it on his map happening in Lawrenceville.
On 206, right?
Yeah, and I found the documentation that proved that it was a 10-mile run. Now, the quirk with 10-mile run, you got to keep in mind, crosses Route 27 in two places. So I had to choose which part of 10-mile run was where the skirmish took place.
So guess what we picked?
So I wanted to pick it near Kendall Park because that's where I live.
Of course.
So they're not further out down the road. Anyway, I'm just pressing for those to get signs.
So help us with the overview of the approach on signs, because I've seen different types of signs around the town.
Yeah, well, the signs, there's the Middlesex Cultural Commission and Arts Commission, they provide grants. So that's one thing we could look into. And I know somebody, Terry Caruso is at another meeting. She couldn't be here tonight, but she knows about it and she might be able to help, if we put together a group of people that they want to apply for this. So, but as far as the signs go, Ed and I were talking about it. If we're putting a sign on a place that's private property, it might be hard to get the clearance to do that. So one of the ideas is to have the sign on township property. And there's a few places you can do that. So we can talk about all the different places in town on this sign, and have QR codes on it that would go to a website to explain it more than you could put on a sign.
Right.
Because the sign's got a
Makes
limited
more
amount of
sense.
real estate. So that's like an easier way to do it, because I think if you were to go in and try to have it on the side of the road,
That'd be too
I
much.
don't know how that would work. It just seems like it'd be really pretty difficult to do, especially if it's on private property.
Yeah, parking and that sort of thing, getting out and reading the sign and so forth, it causes a lot of problems. And Randy and I put our heads together and we thought of an idea. And just to give you an example, let's say you were Kendall Park and you wanted all the historical sites of Kendall Park. Okay, well, you find one location where you can put up a sign that lists all the historic, let's say 10 historic sites in Kendall Park, and you have a map included so that people would know where those are located. So you take the Aaron Hush burial ground, you take the Titus Farm, which
Right.
already has the sign, and you have where gravel cologne was invented. You have
That's right.
where Don Fagan lived, of Steely Dan. So you take all the important, well, I'm talking about Kendall Park now, so it's a stretch. It's not George Washington's time. And so if you put it in a public place, like where the rec center is, and you have, let's say, a Boy Scout doing an Eagle Scout project, And he's doing the big sign, and it's got the map on there, and it's got you are here. And then you look at the map and you can tell where these places are in Kendall Park. But the sign would only have Kendall Park stuff. Wouldn't have Kingston stuff. Because then Kingston would have a sign in some public place where people could casually go and read the sign and so forth, and not disturb the traffic and so forth. And they would have the Kingston historic sites. Then you have the Dean's historic sites. Where the boundaries of Dean's are, I don't know, but we'll find.
Anybody know what that is?
And then you have Dayton, and then you have Monmouth Junction.
Right.
So instead of bothering private property, you have this on property that's for the public. They can see it.
And I could put QR codes up for things that people could scan on their phone, and then they could take their own tour in their own car to the different places. That doesn't have to actually be done on a sign, but that's something that could be done too. I could map out everything
Yeah.
on Google Maps, so you just like click with your phone and then just follow the directions.
Yeah.
So
I do think it's important though for, like maybe, where the
Like the exact
tavern
spot.
was, to have a few signs
Yeah.
on the exact
Real
spot.
signs.
Yeah.
I mean, because then it's really, that's what catches my eye when I
Yeah.
drive through different, and it's great what you're talking about with the other ones, but
No, I-
really important sites where Washington was,
Right.
we should have.
Yeah, we should have both.
Yeah, we should
I
have
don't
both.
disagree, because we already have some signs.
Yeah.
It's just this problem of congestion, like with the traffic and all that stuff. And some of the places where you're gonna put the sign are gonna be problematic. This bridge is no problem because it's off from the current bridge that
Yeah,
people
but
use
there was
now.
parking nearby.
Right.
And
We-
this part-
we found that-
fun.
We found that, or Randy and I found that out with the scavenger hunts.
Right,
If you, when we did the scavenger hunts, we had parking at the Presbyterian Church
right.
or parking at the,
More-
you know?
Right.
So
We got
people could
somebody
park.
responding, I think.
Yeah, but there's a parking nearby.
are they or I just have to mute them? I just need to mute them, I guess.
Oh, can you show the chat in case they want to say something?
Well, they're
I
chuckling
don't
in the background.
see the chat, anything in there.
I'm
There's
wondering,
I
laughing.
can't show it, but no, there's
No
nothing
laughing.
in there.
Oh,
Well, listen, George Washington went to Wawa, we can push that.
nice. So,
Yeah, right, they
His
should have a
favorite store.
special.
That's
I-
right, yeah.
okay, I have,
Right?
I feel like I'm in school raising my hand here. I'm doing a project right now, and I contacted you about Red War graves in South Brunswick.
Yeah.
So right now it's a nightmare. But anyway, I know on some of these graveyards or cemeteries they have lists of people who are buried there who were in the Red War.
Yeah.
Dean's has a few. Probesco wasn't. I checked. But there were a
Okay.
few. I checked.
Yeah. I thought maybe not.
I look, whatever. But the thing is, we need to know who's in those graveyards. Now, Find a Grave only has so much. You probably have more than they do, Mr. Ed. But that could be something too. The DAR has been doing that for eons, posting at different churches who's buried there. Why
Yeah.
can't we do the same thing?
Yeah. So what you're talking about is a list of the
Right on the
veterans, the
outside.
heroes.
As soon as right at the entrance of the
Yeah.
cemetery,
Yeah.
and then this way people can, because I know the church down Salem County where my family's from originally back in 1760. They have it all listed, like all 20-something guys who are buried in there who were Red War patriots, and that's pretty easy to find
Right.
nowadays. I
Right.
mean, with the between Find a Grave and Fold Free and everything else.
And then a lot of the stones are unreadable.
Exactly, which is another thing too.
So we need to update, at least we know the names of the people who served.
Exactly.
And we can't read their stones.
But we know
may
they're
not
there.
Right.
But I could see it, depending on resources, I could see an advantage of somehow saying, okay, in this particular grave site, there are people who actually were involved and fought with and are buried on there, who live within South Brunswick Township. But you mentioned a good idea. You're saying have an introduction of a town, let's say Dayton or Dean's,
Mm-hmm.
on public township property,
Right.
so people could park, and here's a little story. Here's a QR code which will give you an entree into additional information, so people could learn more about that.
Yeah.
That-
Right.
I think that way it mixes both, you know, you had something that's real and tangible in front of you, and you also had the things out there on the internet. So I think it would work well. I think the biggest challenge for us will be to find a place that we can put the signs. Some places like the Titus Farm are easier because they're township property. There's a few places like that. Also, further on, I have some suggestions of places. Yeah, was that?
Go through these.
Yeah. Okay. So
Then we'll all be.
okay. So so what we have, I put together. This isn't everything that we have, of course, but these are just a few places that might work well. And this is no way comprehensive. These are just things I threw together just to get people's ideas, to get the ideas going. So
Now,
the
now,
David's,
Randy, when you say this, it might be good to say what part of South Brunswick it's in, because that is the hardest thing for me. I
East.
can't, I made a whole list of all these places, and I can't figure out, is it in Deans? Is it in Dayton? Should we consider Fresh Ponds? Should we consider, what am I thinking of? It escaped me. But anyway, Road Hall. Should we consider Road Hall? What is Road Hall? Is that part of Dayton?
I guess.
Where's Fresh Ponds? Is that part of Deans or Dayton? What is it? Where's the map that shows where each part of South Brunswick is exactly delineated? We know Kingston.
We don't have it.
Well, the other ones, where are the borders?
At the New Jersey Historic Conference, one of the seminars I attended and researched is that one of the towns, I think it's Cranberry, actually, the concept is to address what you said. So let's assume going on the library website,
Yeah.
because right now I think there are some challenges on the township website, and you walk in to the website and you say, let's look at Monmouth Junction, and in there would be pictures from the Hunter report.
Yeah.
Of those identified homes that are within the Monmouth Junction area. So you could read from your desktop at home about these beautiful homes that exist today, or maybe they're gone.
Yeah.
That existed in that.
That's actually how I started, because John mentioned this to me, and I went to the Cranberry website, and they have I forgot the name. They have it on the left-hand side of the township's website. And if you click on it, it shows you a map, and if you actually click on the property, it'll bring up the Hunter research. It's kind of it's kind of an academic accounting of the house and everything, but we could do more than that because we have actual histories of the house. So it goes beyond the structure, even though the structure is important. The Hunter report is important. It'll go into the actual history because we have that here compiled back here in all these cabinets, and I put out on Facebook for the last couple of years. And Ed has done these things too. So I think that we could put that on to start on those townships. On the library's website. And that's this would be the beginning of that, because I have these great pictures and I have my own too. Terry Caruso actually went around earlier in the year and took pictures of all the historic places. And it just is a mix of some pictures that I have and some pictures that she's provided. But that would be a great way to introduce people to, oh, I drive by this place. I never knew that before. Right now, the Davidson Mill site, it just looks like the middle picture there. It's the mill is, well, the waterfall is still there.
Right.
But you can have a sign there because I think that's township property, and we can have the beautiful Davidson Mill picture there. And even though it's not there anymore, there's still stones. The foundation is still there. And it kind of gives you a sense of wonder. Because, I'm not from South Brunswick, but the first time I went out there and saw it, I thought this is great. I was taking pictures and everything.
Okay.
So I think it would even have more impact on someone that lived in town and drove by it all the time, because they would see it and, they would think, oh, I never knew that before. I even had people that told me this. Said, oh, I went by there all the time. I drive by. I never knew that's what it was. So I think that those are sort of things that really would hook people in. That have an interest, and I think that that's the way to go. And the beginnings of it would be, so now we're talking about another thing. So okay, we're talking about signs here, but it is signs. But I'm also the beginning of this became from what John said about having the site up there and having all the historical houses on the site. I wanted to do this for years, but it takes a bit of work.
Takes a lot of work.
Yeah, it takes a lot of work, and I actually have all the information about the houses, both from the Hunter report, which is, like I said, for somebody who's reading it from the outside, that might not be so incredibly interesting. It talks about when the house is built. For some people, it's interesting, but I have the histories of who lived there, and we could put those things up there, and then why that house is important, in addition to what Hunter has. So actually, there's three things going on here. We're all over the place, but that's okay because it's kind of related. The signs are leading to this, and then that's
Is there
yeah.
any way you could have the new IT director that you have help you with loading and setting up and designing something like that?
Well, we have the web. We have a guy that works on the
On the
web.
web.
Yeah, and there's a web. We pay someone else to run the website, and I've worked with this person,
Okay,
and I put things up there. I have other things up in the cemetery, so I have worked with this person. It's possible. It's just a matter of putting it all up and submitting it to him, and that would be, partly my job or mostly my job.
Before we go into implementation, can we go through your slides?
Oh yeah.
Is there anybody in the chat?
Good
Sort of
point.
be on the same-
Is the
we're
chat-
all
Yeah.
on the same page.
But-
And
but-
somebody had a question for you.
Yeah, wasn't there a
Raise your
chat?
hand.
There was a,
Oh,
somebody with
okay.
their hand up.
Okay. Let me see. It's a little bit like
Somebody with their
cumbersome.
hand
like-
up.
It's not in the chat. So where would it be then?
I know,
They
they had
raised
their
their
hand was up.
Their
I
hands
had
up.
a hand that was up.
So go ahead. You can.
Yeah,
shoot.
this goes back to delineating the sections of Dayton versus Monmouth Junction versus Rocky Hill. My thought is if you determine what is the dead center of the locations and draw lines to the other ones and just the halfway point, you can do modern delineations for the time being of where to divide up South Brunswick, plus how the other towns can do it, for instance. Just my thought, if you catch my drift.
So Ed, you want to paraphrase that? I mean, I wasn't sure because I was letting somebody in the room. I'm not sure I quite caught everything.
Instead-
You can
Well,
just,
I think he's talking about have a central spot and from there it radiates
Put a grid?
out to the edges of whatever we're talking about, whatever section of South Brunswick.
so it's like a spoke, then radiate out.
Yeah, and possibly that sign that we're talking about in a public area can be at that spot or close to that spot. And
Okay.
people can then, and that's when I said you are here. Because people need that reference point in order to figure out where these other places are located.
'Cause-
And that's where the map comes in on the sign.
so you're saying we would
which is-
delineate it?
which is fine with me.
Yeah.
But let's take our Davison Mill site. What is that in? What part of South Brunswick is that in? Do we call that Fresh Ponds? Do we call that Dayton?
Well, Hunter calls Fresh Ponds. It calls it a historic area.
I'd go with
Yeah.
the Hunter research.
Yeah,
Well,
I don't know if they have for every one, but they do have some of those.
Yeah,
places.
but what is Fresh Ponds now?
Well, my thought is sort of, that's what I was getting to, not just the spoke, but I'm sorry for interrupting, but just to say what I was saying, that to divide up the neighborhood of the sections of South Brunswick, where the center, well, you estimate where the centers are, like down, the center of Dayton, center of Monmouth Junction, center of Kingston, I guess Kennel Park, that would take a little, subjectiveness, but then from there, you draw like a line from the center of Monmouth Junction to the center of Dayton, and the halfway point is, well, that's the border of Monmouth Junction and Dayton, for instance. And then they say, well, what section is this farm in or this mill? Well, this is how you determine that, is my thought, to say what section of South Brunswick this belongs to if you're doing projects by these subsections, these villages of South Brunswick.
Yeah, the problem with that is that people in town have a sense of where the borders are.
We do?
But the only thing we have, and I've been to town hall for this stuff, is we have the fire department zones, we have the post office zones, but we don't have a map that shows when you get to this creek, here's Kendall Park, and here's
Yeah, but
Monmouth Junction.
Well, I understand what you're saying, but we're not gonna solve that at this table at this
Right.
time.
No,
I understand that too, just my thought.
Okay, yeah.
And this gentleman is trying to solve the problem, so it's on our minds. Because if we mislabel the
We're gonna
sign,
hear about it.
what's the point?
I
You know,
can
we're just
guarantee you,
asking for
there's a good
trouble.
chance there'll be human errors made
Mhm.
putting this project in place. However, I'm interested in trying to get a broad idea so
Yeah.
we can put something together,
Right.
maybe seek outside funding from either grants or the business group, because Rich Berman mentioned that, you know, so we get something in place by the time 2026 rolls around,
Right.
which, by the way, is not
Not
far
that
away.
far away.
No,
Agreed.
Tomorrow.
let's move
And
on.
all I'm
I only
saying
have
is
nine,
while
so we
we're
don't have a
going
problem.
at
I only have
it,
9 slides.
why can't we get somebody
you
to
gonna
work
solve it?
on a map?
Yeah, what I'm
Let's
saying,
wait on
it's
that.
a variable to be discussed and resolved at a
Yeah,
future
let's
date.
wait.
You're working on
Let's wait on
solutions. You're
that.
working on solutions. Let's
But-
get on with
But
it.
also with Dean's has a sign down there, and there's no strict political boundary with Dean's, but it still has a sign. You're entering Dean's, so
Right.
they have that's been up there for years. I only have a few slides to go through. Let me just go through them, and then we can talk
I'd like
about.
to come back to this slide later.
Okay, we'll go back. So this isn't everything. When I put together these slides, it would take forever, and I don't want to do that. But we have lots of possibilities. These are some of the prettier things, and some of the things that I had. There's La Taverna, and this is another part of Dayton. We have McDowell House and the Headley House. That's the mosquito guy, right? The Rutgers.
Yeah, yeah.
And then so we also have here. There's Dean's. And there's a Dean's house, and it's free. And so these are some really well. The Dean's house is pretty distinctive looking, and the Reitmeyer house, and the Reitmeyer house, for example, was a grocery store. And there's just so many things we could add to it. These are just some ideas to get people familiar. Monmouth Junction. There's tons in Monmouth Junction. But there's the old Ridge School, and everyone goes through town. They go around the curve. They see these houses here. So these are some of the more iconic, they're Victorian houses, and they're pretty and they're eye-catching. Kingston's got a ton. I'm not doing it justice here, but there's a couple of examples of some of the places in Kingston. So like I said, this isn't comprehensive, but all these places have a lot of history. And also, what's the name of the tavern? Van
Tilburg.
Van Tilburg's Tower. I don't have a picture of it, but it's a very historic tavern. And is it in Kingston? But it is in South.
The Van Tilburg Tavern, I think, is gone.
Yeah, the place is gone.
Kept burning.
You're right.
But the Union Line Hotel is still there, and that's on the corner of Ridge Road and Route 27.
So there's tons of possibilities. I just wanted to show some slides to give you an idea. This is probably like I'd say like eighth of what is really out there for the town. And then John wanted to talk about the first slide here. Is there something you wanted to mention about it?
I've got two thoughts.
Okay.
So let's work on the premise. There was a comprehensive professional study done 20 years ago. And there are lots of pictures with underlying little stories about the private. I'm just looking at private homes. For example, the Dayton Presbyterian Church, although it is private, it's public. But the houses on the left are private homes, possibly, existing today.
Right.
So I'm thinking that we put together a website, we put together the picture, put together the story, but somehow we need to honor the privacy of the people who live there.
Right.
You don't want me knocking on your door. Gee, you got a beautiful Applegate house. Can you show me around the house? You know,
Yeah,
You know what I'm saying?
You don't want the sign to attract people to then knock on the door of the house and bother the people. And
I'm just trying to honor the
problem.
privacy of the people who live there.
Right.
They may not even know. We have found out, for example, I think it was the Hubbard house. The person who lived there did not even know the history of the house.
Wow.
And that was Terry Caruso from the group I work with in Dayton. And so I think people would be very interested to know the people who lived there and the families and what they lived with. But at the same time, how do you inform but also honor privacy?
Right.
It's just something to be thought of going forward.
It could be something that's put on the website.
Are these houses on the
Yeah, sure.
historical registry?
I'm sorry?
Are these houses on the historical
Some
registry?
are.
No, there is none. The houses outside of Kingston there are very few that I quote on
Doesn't
historic houses. A lot, for example, there's a house, the Presbyterian Church here. To the right of that is the Slack Carroll house.
Right.
And the there's a group that I work with, and they were afraid that was meant to be a parking lot
Yeah, Wawa was gonna
a
take.
long time ago.
We had a talk here a couple months.
Yeah, and, right next to Wawa, there's the Slack Car House. That was destined to be a parking lot.
Oh,
And
God.
a little woman named Joan Lockhart, probably just like you guys, went up there and they were ready with, it's a wonderful story, but the bottom line was classic story of a little woman going up saying, do you have a demolition permit?
Ah,
And the answer was no, and she dialed 911.
wow.
And that started advocacy by her and others.
Wow.
And the Slack Carroll House exists today because of people like us who stood up and say, I don't want a parking lot. And there is a wonderful history of a country doctor's services, two doctors,
Too, yeah.
over 70 years.
Did that get on the state register of historic places? or-
No,
No, okay.
but we did get it protected by the town.
The
The
township.
Okay.
town,
That
okay.
just happened, but it was protected by the town because the group stepped forward, first to Historic Preservation, got their support, then to the town council. The town council can designate individual houses. Okay, but, and by the way, just as a plug, it's a small group of people. We need some volunteers because it's a beautiful house, but in order to promote it, and by the way, that house is, we believe, the first hospital in Middlesex County after
Wow.
Civil War.
Wow.
You know, but we need some volunteers who want to help. So, and I mean that with all sincerity.
John, I just have to have the sign up sheet.
So,
Oh, wow, just
for the
happen to
Slack
have it, huh?
Carroll House.
no, Terry, there's about a half a dozen people, but we need to double the membership of it. But it's a magnificent house. It's an old doctor's house. But the concern I have is I could see us, if you envision in your mind clicking, going into Dayton, and you hear about the Presbyterian Church, and you hear about the cemetery across the street,
Which is
and you
not
can find out
Presbyterian.
about the Manse or Slack Carroll. And I'm trying to say, okay, here's the Hubbard House. And, so there's a lot of things that you could do with a click of a button. And by the way, once it's developed, in my eyes, on the library website, I'd like to see it duplicated on the township website to get over some internal politics. But the intent would be to celebrate the community.
Can I throw something out there? Because I can, I guess because I can. We want to attract the kids. I mean, seriously, we want to attract the kids. Not many parents are going to sit there and pull up a QR code or whatever it is and show it to their children. They're not going to do it. If the kid sees a sign, then they're going to question it. It's going to be right
Yeah.
there. Because if it wasn't for my parents dragging me
Yet another.
to places, I would not be in the middle of this.
I
If
agree.
it wasn't my grandmother, really wouldn't.
But you also, I believe that about 95 to 97% of the people who currently live here have very limited knowledge regarding the depth and the history of this 225-year-old town. So whatever we do to engage the
Right.
family, and especially the children,
Right.
the pastor, I forget her first
Oh,
name.
she's wonderful. I've met her.
When we did the first scavenger hunt, she was wonderful. She got members of her church to open, to listen, to have little things, but
Oh,
she
Wendy.
got the children.
Mm-hmm.
And you know how she got them? To ring the bell.
My grandson
Ring the
did,
bell.
yes.
And to be honest with you, that was a huge hit. So you have these kids going up, and then I asked to do it, and she said, no, you're too old. It was meant for
Oh,
the kids.
wow. That's her.
No, but it was
That's
the idea, she engaged the children,
right.
she hooked them.
You're not gonna
John, another thing with the kids is walking tours from the schools around, if it's possible, like in Dayton. And they could go around to these sites, see the signs and so forth. Because I know some of the schools do have walking tours for the kids. They will go around, they'll look at nature. They might look at leaves and trees and stuff like that. Not too much on the historic stuff because the teachers don't really know much about this stuff that we're talking about.
Yeah.
We put
But I could
we get-
foresee
I could see
walking
that.
tours from the school, round, back to the school, and they've seen like, 10 or 12 sites. It's a possibility.
As long as you can fit into the curriculum.
Yeah,
What?
yeah.
We got a lot of ideas going on.
I've got a couple of other sites we haven't really talked about
Okay.
because they're not houses. The first one is the Heathcote Brook Bridge,
Okay.
which is down the hill from Kingston on Mapleton Road. There was either a bridge or a ford there, and it was the only way across Heathcote Brook until the 19th century. And we have an 1804 map here that shows that that's the way you went. The current bridge that people use to go up Heathcote Brook Road wasn't there. You had to go down all the way to Mapleton Road and then over. And that was the road that the Continental Army went across when they left Kingston at sunset, going to Long Bridge.
Okay.
So it ties
Oh.
in with the Revolutionary War.
Oh, okay.
Like,
Yeah.
at sunset, when it started to get cool, they left Kingston where they'd been sort of camper trying to stay cool all day.
And what's the name of the bridge again?
It's the Heathcote Brook Bridge.
Heathcote.
And
Okay.
and where is that?
It's at the bottom of the hill in Kingston, going towards Mapleton. So going towards
Mapleton Preserve.
the Mapleton Preserve. The Mapleton Preserve's property butts up against it, so it's
Mapleton was potentially like Road Hall.
yeah. But Mapleton was
Fresh
a
Ponds.
small group of
Very,
houses.
very
that were-
small.
Where St. Joe's.
What street
Just
is
outside
it?
of
It's on
Kingston.
Mapleton Road and
Mapleton?
Academy Street. It changed name at the bridge.
Oh,
You know where St. Joe's is?
yeah,
Up
I
from
know what
there.
you're talking
I
about.
don't. Mapleton Road and Academy Street.
So yeah, Academy Street is the road that comes down from Route 27, and that is always backed up in the morning.
Right,
And when it gets down to the bottom of the hill, it changes name to Mapleton Road.
okay.
So we made anyway. But anyway, that was the way across because everything north of that is all swamp.
Yeah, that's why Washington didn't go that way.
And he went on the one place where he could ford it well.
Yeah, right.
And that was one spot. And the other one is really different, is that where Bunker Hill Road comes into Route 27 and New Road is newer, but Bunker Hill Road takes a weird turn. It's going straight towards Route 27, then it turns. And you wonder, why did it do that? Well, it turns out right there is the property dividing line between East and West New Jersey.
Okay.
Oh,
I'm sorry.
that's
between-
cool.
Between East Jersey and West Jersey.
That's
On the
Providence
Bunker
Line
Hill Road in 27.
Bunker Hill Road and 27. It's funny because it's a nice straight road going straight towards 27, and then it just goes.
But I was told that Province Line Road was the dividing line.
So here's the scoop. The first
Yeah, well, there
thing was
more than one dividing
the
line.
king says you can divide. The line is between, you take Little Egg Harbor
Right.
and you go at this angle up until you hit a bump in the Delaware
Right.
River,
Diagonal.
and nobody ever bothers to survey it.
Ah,
So
In 1686, maybe, they get together in Kingston at the tavern, and after a few rounds of drinks, they say, okay, the line is going to be here. And they move the line to where Province Line Road is.
Right.
But the East Jersey proprietors, the West Jersey proprietors, still haven't figured out, well, still want to know what the survey was because they want to know whose property was what.
Right.
Even if the government says it's here and here, they eventually do a survey, and in 17 whatever, it's the Lawrence line. There are two lines that are just about the same on that old map, and the eastern one goes right up just east of Briggstown, and comes down to Bunker Hill. Is it Bunker Hill Road? Yeah, Bunker Hill.
Was
Road.
that tavern the Greenland Tavern?
Hmm?
Was that the Greenland Tavern that they talked about to keep lines?
The Green, yeah,
That was for
Greenland.
the
Henry
later,
Greenland's
that
tavern
was for the later, the
was
Providence
one
case.
Okay.
when they had the meeting between the officials in East Jersey and West Jersey.
Okay.
But anyway, that's what's interesting is they moved it from, we don't know where it is, and there are many maps that show it going through Kingston to down at Province Line Road and then back up to the other side of Greatstown. So it's an interesting thing about the land that the king seized from the Native Americans. So
Yeah,
It's
and
like-
that was a big deal because we had two jerseys. You
Yeah.
had East Jersey and West Jersey, and that line was the delineation between the
But
two.
even after Andros seized all the colonies, and then it was New Jersey was just one colony.
Yeah, right.
But the property owners were the East Jersey proprietors and the West Jersey proprietors, and their line was what went through. So the folks in Kingston apparently bought West Jersey land, and then they moved the line, and they had to buy East Jersey land.
You're all screwed up. You're in
Oh, it's a
Somerset
real
County.
mess.
Yeah, we don't know here.
Anyway,
Princeton.
anyway, that's a sort of an that was the other. Those were the two spots.
That's
that
good.
Were, that
That's
were not physical buildings, but were
Yeah.
interesting. And the one
Yeah,
yeah.
That always confused me. Historically, New Jersey, no one refers to Jersey as east and west. It's north and south.
Mm.
Yeah, I mean, wasn't that kind of weird? I mean, I mean, I'm just making a comment. You know, that's
There you go.
And then there's that where Central Jersey, we know
Yeah,
where it is.
yeah, the East and West Jersey is a whole history in itself. Two capitals, Burlington and Perth Amboy.
Two established religions, Quaker.
Right,
and
right. The
Presbyterian.
Quakers were big in West Jersey.
yeah.
Protestant groups, Presbyterians and so forth, big in East Jersey.
Mhm.
Slavery, much bigger
And the
in
women
East
had the right to
Jersey than
vote
West
in
Jersey.
For a while, yes.
Yeah, there
Until
was
they
a
figured it
whole
out.
history of that,
Bizarre.
and we've forgotten that because George Washington came along and stomped on all that history.
Aw,
For George.
So,
blame it on George.
so yeah, but the 1600s were quite interesting, and
For a hot time.
I don't think we're going to be able to put much signs up about the 1600s.
No, no, no.
That's good. That's a good one.
So, Randy, where do we go from here?
I was thinking that right now, is somebody put this without first signing up about the signs? Where's-
Somebody did it. I don't know.
Okay.
who.
So we have, if anybody would like to be on the sign committee, we have a sign up sheet. So we have it here, and anybody at home, they could just email me. I'll have my email address, but we're trying to get a group together so we can talk about getting the signage out. Just to be, the start. We got to get the ball rolling on it. So that's the part about the sign. So at this meeting, I think would go to Ed, you wanted to talk about some other things too, right?
Well,
Yeah.
I need to talk to Robbie, but that's between him and me.
Oh, okay.
We don't need all the other people to talk
Oh, okay,
about what
okay.
we're gonna talk about.
Okay.
Unless they pay. If you wanna pay your dues early, because we don't collect dues until September,
What do you?
then we'll let you in on the meeting. Okay. Other than that, Randy, we're okay.
So the signs part, I think that part of the meeting is done because we'll have some names, we'll have some ideas about where to go next with it. I mean, we have some basic ideas. I guess the next part would be to go to the county and find out about what kind of funds are available. And I talked to Terry Caruso, and she knew a little bit about it, but we can pursue those things next. So we have some people here, and then the next thing is we'll just start to see where we can go with that. So first we have to find out about funding. We have some ideas about the signs, so I guess that would be the first step to talk about funding.
Yeah, well, at the April 8th Historic Preservation Committee, Rich Berman, who is the town councilman and liaison, we talked about certain things, and some of the things he said were direct, not unexpected, but still not good news. But he did say, if you come up with an idea, and I'm not sure whether it comes from Historic Society, which I think it should, a group of citizens saying, go to the town council, some sort of an idea to celebrate and affirm, but do some sort of an approach that covers the town. And Rich said, John, you come up with something like that, I can go to the business group
Okay.
and get funding.
Good.
You can imagine a sign that says, here it is, Dayton Toyota or something, but the concept would be to have something in place, probably on township property as an introduction, but get the funding to put it in place from the local business people. So in addition to possible grants.
Okay, so
So
then we
that
have
was the good news opportunity, but the question is to come up with a concept, present it to probably I would go first to Brian. Get him buy-in in terms of what's the best approach, because I think you need council guidance and approval, and then funding, both public and private.
Okay. All right, so we have sort of a path there, right?
Yeah. The bad news that, and Rich was very candid, and I appreciate being candid with people, because we talked about wanting to set up historic districts. I work under the premise that at the present time, the only area that is considered valuable from a historic point of view in this 50 square mile town is a tiny little corner called Kingston.
No.
Everything else may have individual houses, but it's not protected. Therefore, it's subject to demolition by neglect. And so I said, let's do a Dayton Historic District or Monmouth Junction. And he was up front and said, John, you're going to get the NIMBY. Not in my backyard. I own a house, a whole discussion. Hubbard House, I love it. It's somewhat similar, but I don't want you telling me what I can do with the outside of my
Right.
house. The inside is mine, but I don't want you knocking it down. If you had that as a historic house, you know what I'm saying? So that was a real world issue that we need to address. And part of that is education, to let people know the Hubbard House is 150 years old and has a wonderful history. But if you were to knock it down and put a McMansion in its place, you lose it.
Yeah.
So,
Well, one of the way that you do that, which is what we worked on in Kingston through the 90s, was you get people to say, we like this town because, and people said, we like this town because it looks like an old town. You go, okay, well, let's talk about that. How can we celebrate it? Let's have a photo night. Let's have an evening where everybody in the community gets together, or is invited to get together and talks about the way things were 100 years ago, the way things were when you were young. And that was either 50 or 100 years ago, to the people. You get them talking. You get a group of people, you invite more people in, you have picnics, you have whatever else, you grow the community. And Dayton did a pretty good job of that, and getting people together. It's harder to do in Monmouth Junction because you got a railroad line in the middle of it. But, you cultivate it, and then that group of people, when you've had a party that had 200 people at it, and you say, we need to do a certain amount of preserving of this district, then we need a study or whatever, then that might actually work. But you can't put the wagon in front of the horse. You have to actually do the community building first.
that became very clear. And I agree with
I said it long-windedly, but that was basically the idea.
I know, but I do believe that at the present time, Kingston is like the historic center of the
Well, it's
quote South Brunswick Township.
which is funny because it's on the edge,
And-
but yeah. So is Wetherall still exist as a building?
Yeah.
John
Yeah.
Wetherell's.
I'm sorry.
Wetherall still
Yeah.
exists
Yeah.
over.
Right.
Yeah,
That would
that's,
be a
yeah,
good
that's
place
that
to
wasn't
start.
on this list of pictures.
Yeah,
so-
where-
Yeah, it's a good place because, right.
Yeah,
for
we
a
don't
sign.
know where
Yeah, I
the
thought about
original
that, yeah.
site was, but we say
And
that's where
by the
the
way,
Wetherell
there's something
site
that
is.
Anyway, Dayton has a lot of important history in horticulture, being the first horticultural center in New Jersey.
Flemmer's thing, yeah.
and also, you gotta help me out, but I believe that there's a house right across the street from the Indian Field School where there were a couple scientists that were very important with the Panama Canal with disease.
It was.
Like, it doesn't be Headley?
Is it with the mosquitoes?
With the
I
mosquitoes?
don't know.
Yeah,
Oh,
maybe.
yeah.
Okay, well,
And by the way, the scavenger hunt is a crazy idea that starts with this guy up here. He and I were chatting, and it's a big success. Scheduled for October. October isn't too far away. The
No.
concept
No, it's
is
not too far
come
away.
up with ideas, and it's been successful. It's an understatement.
right, just the last thing, because we gotta wrap this up.
yeah.
Anybody here and anybody else as you talk about it and so forth, if you have ideas for a place that you think deserves a sign, contact Randy.
Yeah, email
And
me.
he can put it on the list. I'm forming a list now, but I'm struggling with identifying what sections of South Brunswick we're actually going to do this for. So as I work on that, you can be providing ideas for the places where we're gonna put the signs, okay? And as they come to you, just contact him. And we'll research, a little research on it, see if it's okay, and we'll put it on the list. That's where you can come in on this. And then, I think somewhere down the road, like you have a group in Kingston that is into this stuff.
We've had.
We need a group in Kendall Park into their stuff. We need a group in Dayton. They sort of have a group.
Agreed.
Monmouth Junction needs a group. Okay, so as we look at the sections of it, Dean's sort of a ghost area, you know, as to who's going to be working on that. And if we can get a group of people from each section of South Brunswick, that would help out too.
Can I ask you a quick question? Just go around the table. What section of the town do you live in?
Monmouth Junction.
Well, actually, I wanted to bring up, you never mentioned Kendall Park at all, but when I moved here 60 years ago, my mailing address was Franklin Park.
Right.
So when did everything change to the name of a builder, Kendall Park?
There's
And
a
that's where
difference.
the largest
Yeah.
space in the whole town.
Yeah, so you live in Kendall Park.
Well, I live in
Oh,
Monmouth
you did.
Junction
Oh,
now, but I lived in South Brunswick 60 years, 40 years in Kendall Park. But my mailing address at the beginning was Franklin Park, and our mail went to Franklin Park. Isn't that what is the
No
historic?
idea.
Post office.
Well, the
Post
Franklin
office,
Park
post
was on
office.
both sides of
Yeah,
Route
yeah.
27. That's
And
why.
most of Kingston's address is
Yeah, you're
Princeton.
right, must be-
Yeah, Franklin
Most
Park
of
was on both sides of Route 27. So the Kendall Park original area was part of Franklin Park because that straddled Route 27. That's where that
But
came
none of Kendall Park was on the other side.
No,
of
no, 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 no,
27,
no.
only
There's,
Franklin
there's a
Park.
wonderful history of the whole Kendall Park
Oh, yeah.
development.
Franklin
And-
Park was on both sides.
Post offices
Franklin Park
are their
was on
own
both
Yeah.
space.
What part of the
Yeah,
town do
they
you
did their
live?
own thing.
Dayton,
Dayton.
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 Pluto.
What?
Kendall Park.
Kendall Park.
MJ.
Huh?
MJ.
MJ.
Kendall Park.
Very classy. And Kingston.
Kingston. I live in Monmouth Junction.
Monmouth Junction.
Okay.
I live in
No, no.
Monmouth Junction now.
Yeah.
Nobody admitted to living in Dean's. That's gonna
No,
be
no, no.
our Achilles heel, I'll tell you right now.
I know, but to be honest with you, the probability of success of expanding historic districts is going to involve all of us plus others
Right.
to provide education. I love this idea. I'm going to steal it. You bring people together and you take you as talk about what it was like when you first moved here, and it's radically different now than it was 60 years ago. And get people comfortable with the idea of having the Hubbard House part of a Dayton Historic District.
Okay.
Okay,
And-
let me interpret that for you, that was a question.
I believe that if you
What color
go,
was General Washington's white horse?
if you look at the Dayton area where Wawa is, that one
have
street
everyone.
going from Ridge Road, Old
It's a
Ridge
multiple
Road up,
choice question.
that would be a classic
Yes,
Yeah.
anchor
yes,
with the Presbyterian
That's the
Church
same.
as the anchor.
yes.
Okay.
All right,
I have-
thanks.
Question. Somewhere in this
Thank you.
library, there are oral histories or CDs about families going back in the day.
Yeah, they're
Somewhere.
on the website. They're on the
Oh,
website.
on the website now?
Yeah, if you look up
Because,
on.
like I said, my family grew up here in the 30s. My mom was born in 33. So the classic picture of my whole family. They say the mother like, look at a bunch of refugees. But anyway, nobody really knows who's been here this long. People are here. Like, I don't consider myself a newbie. I've been here since '93, and I'm a newbie in this town. But there are people who've been here. I mean, look at the Von Thun house. The Von Thuns, 1913. It's still there. So we have people who have such history still in this town that no one's tapped.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, I had the greatest time. I talked to people. I had the greatest time talking to people just about stuff, that they experienced back in the day. And I know that Rutgers has a whole oral history department.
Yeah.
I mean, we have so much oral history from people who lived here.
I had
For
60 videos,
generations.
60 videos up there.
Yeah,
I
well,
think
we have some,
How
but we
many?
need more.
60.
But before I forget, I want to make sure I publicly say thank you, and I'm pointing at you purposely. Because
Meaning Randy.
I look
can't
at
see.
Facebook, I'm looking at Randy, but I'm looking at the Facebook, and you've done some wonderful things posting
Oh yeah.
about veterans who have served in our armed forces, the houses, and to me, it's like this is a rich history, and you give these snapshots, which I thank you for.
Yeah, it's I think that it's nice because they're little vignettes and it works well with Facebook because a lot of times people might not want to look at the whole history and it's perfect. You just look at it on their phone and that's it. It's short and it's succinct, I guess that's a better word for it, right? So but when I put those together, I try to really put the words, as many words as I can put together without making
Yes,
it be too
yes.
long. I really try to edit it and edit it down.
I know, but
Yeah, but no, but that same thing with the houses. I think all these things can serve because that's how you hook people. They might not be interested, but they see a nice picture with it. They see a photograph with
yeah, but
it.
the picture says, "Gee, I know where that is."
Yeah, that's the hook, and that's what I've been working on. And I think that that's what we can do with this too,
Thank
with
you.
the houses. Yeah, oh, great.
Thank you.
I'm glad it works.
By the way, I want to avoid something, and since those who live in the Dayton area will know it, you know where Wawa is. You now know a little bit about Slack Carroll.
Sure.
Well, there is a sad story on the opposite side. If you go at Wawa and you go down Ridge Road east, there's a lawn.
Yeah.
Okay, when I first joined historic preservation, there was a house there from the 1860s and 1870s. And the owner lived behind the house. And the owner said, I can't, too costly for me to keep up. I want to demolish the house. It was not protected. Pardon my French, there wasn't a damn blinking thing you could do. And it's gone. And we've lost houses like that. And it can happen today. You know, they got the demolition permit. They went to historic preservation. It's demolition by neglect.
Right.
Well, they just didn't value it. What they wanted was a lawn. They got a lawn. And so it's unfortunate.
Yeah.
But
Yes, Joe.
again, the invitation's open. If you're interested, you know, the Slack Carroll House can use the help. Thank you for a wonderful meeting.
Okay, great.
Yeah,
Thanks.
we're all
You're welcome. All right, so good night, everybody. And if you have any questions, just email me.
I need Ed Velden.
So what?
What did I sign up
This,
for?
what do you think?
Is
You
that
go
the
for it.
sign up?
It's like